The aftermath of Pearl Harbor revealed something extraordinary. Dusty reports lay scattered across Admiral Osami Nagano's desk at Imperial Naval Headquarters in Tokyo. December 8, 1941, had brought stunning numbers. Nearly 200 American aircraft destroyed, 8 battleships crippled or sunk, over 2,400 Americans dead. The Pacific Fleet lay broken in Hawaiian waters. Nagano felt satisfied as he reviewed these statistics. Victory seemed complete. What escaped every Japanese naval officer was a transformation already beginning thousands of miles away. Ancient vessels rotting in American harbors were about to reshape naval warfare forever. The sleeping giants of steel would soon awaken. American production capabilities were about to explode beyond anything Japanese planners could comprehend. Ships would pour from American yards faster than the Imperial Navy could count them. The mathematics of victory were shifting dramatically. Scattered along America's eastern seaboard lay maritime graveyards. The James River anchorage near Fort Eustis, Virginia, contained one such collection. Over 100 vessels from the previous World War sat in various stages of decay. Congressional funding had dwindled through the 1930s. These ships existed in bureaucratic purgatory. Too valuable for scrap metal, too expensive for proper maintenance, seemingly too obsolete to matter in modern warfare. Bird colonies had claimed ventilation shafts. Rust consumed machinery. Some decks sprouted actual vegetation. These floating museums would soon thunder back to life. The morning after Pearl Harbor changed everything instantly. Workers flooded the anchorage from Norfolk naval facilities. Civilian contractors arrived in droves. The reactivation orders seemed impossible yet simple. Every floating hull must return to service immediately. Initial surveys revealed catastrophic deterioration. Engine rooms sat flooded with brackish water. Corrosion had consumed vital machinery beyond recognition. Wildlife had colonized abandoned spaces. Yet within mere weeks, smoke began rising from stacks dormant for over a decade. The USS Bridgeport had started life as a German passenger liner. America seized her in 1917. Now she became among the first to return from maritime death. Black smoke poured from her funnels. Engines that hadn't turned in years began their mechanical heartbeat again. Spring 1942 witnessed dozens of resurrections. These weren't glamorous warships, but humble workhorses. Repair vessels, tankers, cargo haulers, transport ships. Their unglamorous roles would prove absolutely essential. America desperately needed every hull capable of floating. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, intelligence officers struggled with impossible numbers. Japan's Naval Analysis Department was understaffed and overwhelmed. Their pre-war assessments had seemed logical and conservative. America might produce 500,000 tons of naval vessels annually under maximum effort. Perhaps 2 million tons of merchant shipping at absolute peak capacity. The methodology appeared sound and scientific. Analysts counted American shipways carefully. They calculated available steel production. They assessed potential labor availability. Naval attachés returning from Washington reported systematic American inefficiencies. Labor disputes plagued American industry. Racial tensions divided the workforce. Peacetime complacency infected management. Workers resisted overtime demands. These observations were accurate for peacetime conditions. They completely misread wartime transformation potential. Japanese analysts observed labor strikes without imagining union no-strike pledges. They noted racial segregation without envisioning expanded wartime opportunities. When intelligence officers suggested higher American capabilities, their reports faced dismissal. Strategic doctrine assumed quick victory through decisive naval engagement. The Kantai-Kessen concept predicted war's end within 12 months. Long-term industrial capacity seemed irrelevant if climactic battles would decide everything quickly. By 1943, America would produce over 19 million tons of shipping, nearly 10 times what Japanese experts thought physically possible. This represented more than intelligence failure. This was catastrophic misreading of American society's mobilization capacity. Democratic systems possessed hidden strengths that authoritarian analysts couldn't perceive. The United States Maritime Commission transformed overnight from New Deal bureaucracy into unprecedented shipbuilding coordinator. Admiral Emery Land understood both complex engineering and government bureaucracy. His mandate was elegantly simple yet monumentally challenging. Build vessels faster than enemies could sink them. Expanded wartime authority allowed the Commission to commandeer private shipyards. They allocated scarce materials efficiently. They directed labor where needed most. They coordinated the entire industrial ecosystem. This coordination proved as crucial as the ships themselves. Japanese intelligence focused on counting completed vessels. They missed the invisible organizational revolution happening behind production lines. The Liberty ship concept emerged from British designs for simple cargo vessels. These ships prioritized rapid construction over sophisticated technology. Reciprocating engines replaced modern turbines. Straight lines substituted for complex curves. Every design decision optimized for speed and simplicity. Inexperienced workers could master these vessels quickly. The first Liberty ship SS, Patrick Henry, launched September 27, 1941. Her construction required 244 days. By early 1942, construction times fell below 100 days consistently. Late 1942 saw some yards completing ships under 50 days. The learning curve accelerated continuously. Each vessel taught lessons applied to the next. The human element required equal attention and innovation. Training programs transformed farmers into competent seamen within weeks. The Merchant Marine Academy compressed 4-year programs into 18 months. By war's end, over 25,000 new merchant mariners had been trained and certified. This created a merchant fleet larger than Japan's entire maritime workforce. The numbers were staggering and unprecedented in naval history. Henry Kaiser entered shipbuilding without any maritime experience whatsoever. His background lay in massive construction projects like dams and bridges. His approach revolutionized traditional shipbuilding completely. Break complex projects into simple, repetitive tasks. Maximize parallel work streams. Invest heavily in worker support systems. Richmond, California became home to 4 separate Kaiser facilities. Eventually, these would contain 55 individual shipways. Kaiser implemented true assembly line shipbuilding techniques. Traditional yards built vessels sequentially from keel upward. Kaiser built ships in parallel sections simultaneously. Bow sections took shape while stern sections progressed elsewhere. Deck houses were completed off-site with full equipment. Then massive cranes lifted them into final position. The workforce transformation proved equally revolutionary and controversial. Skilled shipbuilders were scarce and expensive. Kaiser refused to lower construction standards. Instead, he redesigned the work itself fundamentally. Rather than training complete shipbuilders, he created narrow specialists. Individual welders mastered single-joint types perfectly. They performed identical tasks thousands of times. Kaiser created comprehensive supporting infrastructure to eliminate production bottlenecks systematically. Inadequate housing led to entire city construction. Healthcare needs produced what became Kaiser Permanente. Childcare shortages resulted in 24-hour nurseries. Every obstacle to production was identified and systematically eliminated. By mid-1942, Kaiser's yards achieved remarkable completion rates. While specific record claims require careful verification, the sustained production pace was absolutely undeniable. Richmond yards alone would produce over 700 vessels during wartime. The Pearl Harbor attack contained hidden strategic miscalculations despite tactical brilliance. Admiral Yamamoto Isoroku understood American potential better than his superiors. Harvard education and Washington service had shown him American industrial capacity firsthand. His prediction about running wild for 6 months reflected this understanding. The famous sleeping giant quotation attributed to him is likely fictional. The attack's immediate success seemed to validate Japanese strategic planning completely. Critical elements were overlooked or deliberately ignored. The Pacific Fleet's carriers were absent from Pearl Harbor. More importantly, the harbor's infrastructure remained intact. Repair facilities, fuel storage, submarine bases. These facilities would enable rapid American recovery. Most significantly, Pearl Harbor unified American opinion instantaneously and completely. Pre-war America had been deeply divided and isolationist. The surprise attack transformed this overnight. Workers who might have resisted overtime now worked double shifts voluntarily. Unions suspended all strike actions indefinitely. Women entered industrial workforce in unprecedented numbers. The production statistics reflect this dramatic transformation. Ship deliveries accelerated monthly throughout 1942. Each increase represented multiple factors converging. More shipyards coming online, existing yards becoming more efficient, workers developing greater skills, systems becoming increasingly refined and streamlined. By mid-1942, American shipyards were achieving what Japanese planners had deemed physically impossible. Monthly Liberty ship completions rose steadily and inexorably. 5 ships in January, 14 in March, 33 in June, 67 in September. Peak production came in October 1943, 106 Liberty ships completed in a single month, more than 3 vessels per day. Japanese intelligence struggled desperately to process these incredible numbers. Neutral sources reported hundreds of new American vessels in Atlantic ports. Japanese analysts suggested various explanations to maintain credibility. Americans were counting identical ships multiple times. They included Great Lakes vessels inappropriately. They were simply fabricating numbers completely. Any explanation seemed more plausible than accepting mathematical reality. Each Liberty ship represented enormous industrial coordination behind the scenes, thousands of tons of steel delivered in precise sequence, engines from multiple manufacturers arriving exactly when needed, components from hundreds of suppliers flowing without any interruption. The organizational capability this represented was as impressive as the ships themselves. Meanwhile, reactivated reserve fleet vessels provided crucial operational support throughout the Pacific. Repair ships could restore damaged vessels without lengthy voyages to major shipyards. Tankers extended operational range significantly. Munition ships maintained the ammunition supply that American firepower doctrine absolutely demanded. Japanese submarine commanders provided the most direct witness to American naval expansion. Their war patrol reports were often dismissed by headquarters as exaggerated or unreliable. These reports documented the complete transformation of American maritime power. Commander Kanashi Takakazu of submarine ID-19 achieved spectacular success in September 1942. His torpedoes sank the aircraft carrier USS Wasp. Subsequent patrols reported increasingly difficult operating conditions, larger convoys with denser escort screens, continuous air patrol coverage. By 1943, attacking American convoys had become nearly suicidal for Japanese submarines. American anti-submarine warfare evolved rapidly, enabled by industrial abundance. Escort carriers converted from merchant hulls provided air cover far from land bases. Destroyer escorts produced in hundreds hunted submarines relentlessly and effectively. Radar and sonar technology improved continuously. By late 1943, Japanese submarines had shifted from offensive operations to desperate supply runs. The hunters had become the hunted systematically, forced to avoid detection rather than seek targets aggressively. One commander noted bitterly that Americans seemed to have built a destroyer for every ton of rice in Japan. Kaiser's Richmond shipyards exemplified American production methods at their absolute peak. The complex operated continuously with day and night shifts, maintaining constant activity levels. The prefabrication system had evolved to remarkable sophistication. Major ship sections were constructed in separate specialized assembly areas. Bow sections, weighing over 200 tons, were built as complete units. Stern sections arrived with propeller shafts already perfectly installed. Deck houses came fully equipped with plumbing and electrical systems completed. These massive sections were assembled on shipways like giant three-dimensional puzzles. The workforce included unprecedented numbers of women, reaching 25 to 30% in some facilities. Minorities found expanded opportunities despite persistent discrimination and limited advancement. The average worker had less than 1 year's experience, yet productivity consistently exceeded pre-war standards set by experienced craftsmen. Supporting infrastructure was equally impressive and comprehensive. Miles of railroad track moved materials efficiently throughout the complex. Massive cranes lifted weights that traditional shipbuilders claimed were impossible to handle. Machine shops and foundries operated in precisely coordinated sequences. Within Japanese leadership, recognition of inevitable defeat came at different times. The pattern was remarkably consistent across individuals. Initial successes bred confidence. Gradual doubt emerged slowly. Sudden acknowledgement of mathematical impossibility followed. The Marianas' defeat in June 1944 marked a crucial turning point. The Battle of the Philippine Sea was dubbed the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot by American pilots. Task Force 58 brought more carriers and battleships than the entire pre-war Imperial Navy possessed. Japanese naval aviation was effectively destroyed in a single engagement. Over 400 aircraft lost while shooting down fewer than 30 American planes. Admiral Toyota Soimu, commanding the combined fleet, later acknowledged bitter reality. After the Marianas, he knew the war was mathematically lost. Americans had built a navy Japan couldn't fight. Supplied by merchant fleets Japan couldn't sink. Supported by industry Japan couldn't possibly match. B-29 bombers appeared over Japan in late 1944, flying from Marianas bases. American superiority became visible to Japanese civilians. Japanese fighters could barely reach B-29 altitudes. Successful interceptions were extremely rare. Each bomber represented American industrial capability, complex, expensive, mass-produced. The sight of untouchable bombers shattered remaining illusions about Japanese defensive capabilities. Even as Liberty ships poured from shipyards, the Maritime Commission implemented continuous improvements. Victory ships addressed Liberty ship limitations while maintaining mass production advantages. The key improvement was significantly higher speed. Liberty ships' 11-knot maximum made them vulnerable to submarine attack. Victory ships achieved 15 to 17 knots, fast enough to outrun surface submarines, sufficient to reduce voyage times significantly. Design improvements eliminated structural weaknesses that had caused some Liberty ships to develop dangerous cracks. Production transition demonstrated remarkable American adaptability. Shipyards switched from Liberty to Victory production without significant delays. Workers adapted to new techniques while maintaining high productivity levels. By mid-1944, Victory ships were completed as quickly as the simpler Liberty ships had been built earlier. Over 500 Victory ships would be constructed. Many served decades after the war ended. Their durability validated the mass production approach completely. Quantity hadn't sacrificed quality when properly managed and executed. The shipyard workforce represented dramatic and permanent social change. Women performed jobs previously considered impossible for them: welding, riveting, crane operation. African Americans found opportunities in skilled positions previously denied them. Discrimination persisted, and advancement remained limited. But wartime necessity had opened doors that peacetime prejudice had kept sealed. Kaiser's innovations extended far beyond the shipyard itself. His healthcare system, established to keep workers healthy and productive, pioneered prepaid medical care concepts. Childcare centers operated around the clock continuously. Housing projects created instant communities from nothing. Vanport City near Portland housed over 4,000 residents at peak population. It became Oregon's second-largest city virtually overnight. These social support systems weren't charitable gestures, but calculated investments in productivity. Healthy workers were productive workers consistently. Workers with reliable childcare could work any shift assigned. Workers with nearby housing spent less time commuting to work. Every barrier to maximum production was identified and systematically addressed. The productivity gains achieved were remarkable and sustained. Labor hours per ship fell continuously as workers gained experience and systems improved. By late 1944, a Liberty ship required about one-third the labor hours of early 1942 construction. This wasn't just increased efficiency, but fundamental transformation of work itself. Traditional craft methods gave way to industrial techniques. Individual skill mattered less than systematic organization. By 1945, the arithmetic of American victory had become undeniable to any rational observer. The Philippines campaign demonstrated American ability to project overwhelming force anywhere in the Pacific theater. Invasion fleets numbered hundreds of vessels supported by supply trains stretching across the entire Pacific Ocean. At Iwo Jima, concentrated American firepower exceeded anything in military history. The preliminary bombardment expended more ammunition than many entire nations possessed. The assembled fleet exceeded 1,400 vessels, likely the largest naval concentration ever assembled in human history. The kamikaze campaign represented Japan's desperate attempt to inflict unacceptable losses through organized suicide attacks. Tactical successes were achieved regularly. Dozens of ships were sunk. Hundreds suffered damage. In previous wars, such losses might have forced operational suspension. Against American industrial output, they were absorbed and replaced without strategic impact whatsoever. By summer 1945, American naval forces operated with casual abundance. This would have seemed fantastical in December 1941. Damaged ships were quickly repaired and returned to active service. Lost ships were rapidly replaced by new construction. The mathematics had become completely insurmountable. The atomic bombs that ended the war obscured a fundamental strategic truth. Japan was already comprehensively defeated by conventional industrial warfare. The bombs accelerated surrender timing but didn't cause the defeat itself. That had been determined months earlier in American shipyards. Between December 1941 and August 1945, American shipyards produced over 5,000 merchant vessels. These totaled more than 50 million deadweight tons. Japan produced a small fraction of this enormous output. America built more ships in individual months than Japan built in entire years. The disparity extended far beyond mere numerical comparisons. American ships incorporated continuous improvements throughout the war. Quality control improved even as quantity increased dramatically. Innovation continued throughout mass production periods. This combination of quantity-quality and continuous improvement proved completely insurmountable for Japan. Admiral Land's Maritime Commission had orchestrated victory through superior logistics. Ships were constructed faster than enemies could sink them. Crews were trained faster than enemies could kill them. This was victory through industrial arithmetic rather than military heroism. The mathematical reality was elegant and brutal. Post-war interrogations revealed how Japanese officers gradually recognized defeat's inevitability. Early victories had seemed to validate pre-war strategic planning completely. Each subsequent engagement showed America growing stronger while Japan grew progressively weaker. One senior officer provided a stark and honest timeline. After Midway, we had lost the strategic initiative. After Guadalcanal, we had lost operational momentum. After the Marianas, we had lost the war itself. After the Philippines, we awaited the end. After Okinawa, we prayed for it. The home front's recognition lagged behind military reality, but followed the same inevitable pattern. Government propaganda maintained victory claims, even as Japanese cities burned nightly. B-29 raids, naval bombardment, and submarine blockade made reality increasingly undeniable. By spring 1945, most Japanese civilians understood the war was lost. Few dared voice this dangerous recognition publicly. The refusal to acknowledge mathematical reality cost hundreds of thousands of unnecessary deaths on both sides. Continuing resistance against impossible odds wasn't strategy, but psychological denial. The atomic bombs provided a face-saving excuse to end what American shipyards had already decided months earlier. The political leadership could surrender to superior technology rather than admit complete industrial inadequacy. The reserve fleet reactivation and subsequent shipbuilding surge demonstrated capabilities that transcended traditional military calculations completely. Democratic societies, when properly unified, could achieve mobilizations that authoritarian planners simply couldn't imagine or replicate. The production techniques developed had lasting global influence: prefabrication, modular assembly, workforce specialization. These methods influenced manufacturing worldwide for decades after the war ended. Social changes proved equally permanent and transformative. Women in heavy industry, minorities in skilled positions, employer-provided health care. These developments reshaped American society permanently and irreversibly. Japanese intelligence failure wasn't primarily about information gathering, but about processing available information through cultural filters. Cultural assumptions and strategic doctrine prevented accurate assessment of American capabilities. They could count existing ships accurately. They couldn't imagine the system producing them. They could observe factories. They couldn't envision their wartime transformation potential. They understood military tactics thoroughly. They didn't comprehend industrial logistics. The contrast was stark and ultimately decisive. Japan brought sophisticated tactics, experienced crews, and spiritual determination to the conflict. America brought industrial capacity, organizational capability, and mathematical inevitability to bear. In modern industrial warfare, production mattered more than individual courage. Logistics proved more decisive than tactics. Arithmetic became more important than fighting spirit. When democracy fully mobilized the story of America's reserve fleet, reactivation reveals how World War II was actually won. Not through dramatic naval battles alone, but through shipyards, steel mills, and training centers across America. The aging ships returning to service in 1941 were part of a complete transformation that reshaped global power permanently. The Japanese miscalculation wasn't simple intelligence failure, but fundamental misunderstanding of American society's mobilization capacity. They observed peacetime inefficiency without recognizing wartime potential. They counted ships without understanding the system producing them. They prepared for a war of battles while America prepared for a war of production. Henry Kaiser and others didn't just build ships efficiently. They revolutionized manufacturing methods globally. Their techniques would influence industry worldwide. The social changes they initiated reshaped American society permanently. The organizational capabilities they demonstrated defined modern industrial logistics. The human dimension encompasses both triumph and tragedy simultaneously. American workers achieved unprecedented production miracles. Japanese forces fought courageously against mathematical impossibility. Civilians on both sides paid war's terrible price. The outcome was determined by industrial capacity rather than military valor. The lessons remain relevant in modern times. Industrial capacity still underlies military power globally. Production capabilities still determine strategic options. Democratic societies still possess mobilization potential that surprises observers who see only peacetime inefficiencies. The reserve fleet vessels returning to service in 1941 carried more than cargo across the Pacific. They carried proof that industrial democracy could transform from peacetime complacency to wartime dominance. The speed and scale shattered every assumption about modern warfare's limitations. In shipyards across America, workers built not just ships, but a completely new world order, one vessel at a time. The mathematical reality was elegantly simple. America could build ships faster than Japan could sink them, train crews faster than Japan could kill them, produce supplies faster than Japan could destroy them. This wasn't just military victory but transformation of warfare itself. The age of decisive battles had ended permanently. The era of industrial warfare had definitively arrived. Japan learned this lesson through devastating and complete defeat. The empire that seemed invincible in December 1941 was reduced to smoking ruins by August 1945. Defeated not by superior tactics, but by superior production. Not by greater courage, but by greater capacity. The reserve fleets rising from American waters had triggered an industrial tsunami. This transformed the Pacific War from military contest to mathematical certainty. The final historical paradox is that Japan's post-war recovery employed the very methods that had destroyed its empire. Japanese shipyards adopted American production techniques. Japanese industry embraced mass production methods. The lessons of the war transformed Japan from military power to economic powerhouse. This proved that industrial capabilities winning wars could also win peace. In the end, the story of America's Ghost Fleet isn't just about ships, but about warfare's complete transformation. When industrial capacity meets unified national will, remarkable things happen. When democratic societies mobilize for total war, traditional military calculations become obsolete. When production becomes strategy and factories become as important as armies, the mathematics of victory change completely. The reserve fleet vessels returning to service in 1941 didn't just help win a war. They proved that in the modern industrial age, the factory floor had become as decisive as any battlefield. The assembly line proved as important as the battle line. Industrial arithmetic became the ultimate arbiter of victory.